We are going to get to talk about everyone's favorite topic today. Absolutely everyone's favorite topic. Hands down, universal. Are you ready? We're going to talk about money. We're talking about money today. The mindset of money. And I'm going to share a couple quotes from my run this morning and some conversations around it that was like, ooh, that kind of hit a little close to home. That was a really good reminder. And I don't think we talk about it enough. People have a lot of strong emotions around it. There's a lot of programming around it. There's a lot of feelings around it. There's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of guilt around it, whether you have it or you don't have it. There's a lot of interesting things around money, how we see it, how we see others with it, etc. There's just so much. It's really one of the most fascinating conversations and topics that we could ever talk about. I'm going to start off with this quote here. It comes from Cody Sanchez. And if you don't follow Cody Sanchez, she's really prolific on Instagram. And her niche is she buys businesses. She buys non-sexy, non-interesting businesses that make tons of cash flow. She's an acquisition specialist. She worked at Goldman Sachs for years and she busted through the glass ceiling. And she's one of the most powerful female entrepreneurs out there. She's one of the most powerful entrepreneurs out there that happens to be female, right? And she has this really great quote. And she said, money is a fickle mistress. If you ignore her and don't watch her closely, she will find another master. Money is a fickle mistress. If you ignore her and don't watch her closely, she'll find another master. There's been seasons in my life where I've found that to be more than true. And it's usually when I'm having moments or seasons of less abundance than I anticipate. And for whatever reason, sometimes when we think like if we ignore, we close our eyes, we dig our head in the sand, it gets better. If we don't open the mail, it'll get better. If I don't have to look at it, then I don't have to pay it, et cetera, et cetera. And it just goes and goes and goes. And what I've also found is the moment I start paying attention to it, I get a lot more awareness of where it's going, how I'm using it, how I'm not using it, et cetera. And I get a little bit more control over it. And then Alex Hormozi was also talking about this. He says, visit your money daily. And he says, for how long? He says, until you can't notice the fluctuations of the market. He said, I was visiting my accounts daily until I got it to about $20 million. Up until that point, I was looking at it every single day. And he says this, if you have trouble managing or visiting your money, I'm going to go ahead and bet that you also have trouble managing your time. Because your time is actually more valuable than money. If you disrespect money, then you absolutely disrespect your own time. And he says, I'm going to go ahead and also bet that you're an emotional spender. You spend to feel good. You spend emotionally when you want to because you deserve to. And then you also waste your time emotionally based on comfort. You do what you want to do versus what you have to do because you're tied to emotion, not the process. He says, I'm going to also bet you probably eat and drink for comfort too. And he says, your lack of discipline with your money is your lack of discipline with your life. And that money and wealth is simply a mindset around discipline. He said, wealth, again, wealth is a discipline. Money wealth, time wealth, and health wealth. We have wealth in these three areas. It's not just simply about money. And he said, most people spend their time. Wealthy people spend money to invest on getting time back. So he says the first goal for people is to create money. The second goal, once you have money, is to get back time. And he mentioned this as well. He said, your wealth is not determined by who you spend your time with. He said, by who you compare yourself to. He said, think about this. He said, the wealthiest person on the planet is constantly spending time with people less wealthy than them. However, in their mind, they're comparing themselves to somebody who has or has accumulated more. And the question isn't, comparison as far as the thief of joy and looking at lack. Comparison is like, if you're looking at somebody who has more, has accumulated more, and has achieved more, the question is, what did it take and what are you willing to do and give up? What are the disciplines that you might be lacking? Rich people spend their money on time. Poor people by stuff, justified with, well, you only live once, or there will always be time to make more. That is a poverty mindset. He says money loves speed, wealth loves time, and poverty feeds on indecision and emotion. Money loves speed, wealth loves time, and poverty loves indecision and emotion. And then this was the first time I've ever heard this. So this is really interesting. I'd be interested to open up that conversation around this. And we've all heard the quote from Timothy, money is the root of all evil, which is accurate or inaccurate? Inaccurate. What is it? What is it? What is the version 2 that everyone's focusing on now? It's what?
So it says the love of money is the root of all evil.
That's version 2. There's actually, he said there's 4 more versions or interpretations of that line, and these are the ones that are actually the most accurate. He says it's not the love of money is the root of all evil. He says the love of money is the root of all other evils. The chase and the love of accumulation is the seed for all of the other deadly sins. And he says those that don't have the purest of intention to begin with, money just simply amplifies those pursuits into the other evils. Accumulation for the sake of hoarding bears seeds of gluttony, unethical pursuits, corner cutting, etc., etc., etc. So he said, so wealth is simply a factor of discipline, a factor of your heart, and whether or not you're willing to fall in love with the process and not the tally. Now, I just shared a couple ideas, quotes, and thoughts around it. And I don't know, I'm just kind of curious, like, how did some of those land for you? What do you resonate with? What do you maybe disagree with or want to push back on? Because this is an open conversation. This is a mindset conversation on everyone's favorite topic that we all agree on. No, that was sarcasm.
When you first said we're going to talk about money, I just was very aware of like this pit in my stomach and this like feeling as soon as you just said the word money.
Isn't that interesting?
It really is. It really is. And I think we've talked a lot about this, the mindset of money and breaking through those barriers so you can even just allow that money to come to you, or not self-sabotage yourself. And so, yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of the things you said resonated really well. And it really hit home when you were talking about, basically like if you're not visiting your money, you're probably also wasting time, and you're probably also like an emotional spender and an emotional eater, and all those things can be so true in different seasons of my life. That's like the comfort place when I'm, and it's funny when you're lower on money or things feel a little bit tighter, that's when all the bad habits seem to creep back in. I don't know what the solution is. Like, how do you keep your mindset straight when you're in that, when you're in that season of life where money's maybe a little tighter? How do you open up your mindset so that you can essentially like manifest or allow that to come to you?
I can share when we get it in a little bit. Go ahead. Anyone else?
I don't know, but after those comments about what is a poverty mindset, I'm going to have to remember to wear steel toe boots from now on to these conversations because that hurt stepping on those toes. Let me tell you.
Oh, we're all in it together, sir. Here we are. We're one big happy family of right now. I'm only sharing the things that also kick me right in the gut. And you're muted if you're talking. That's all right. I know what you're saying is about to be really exciting. Go.
No, I wasn't saying anything. I was on the road. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was talking to Ann. Ann was.
Oh,
Ann was
my bad.
Oh, you're good. You're right. You're fine.
I don't know how exciting it is, but there's also that scripture that talks about how hard it is It's harder for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. So go with that one.
What do you mean? What do you,
So how does that make you feel? I mean, if you're trying to accumulate wealth and it's harder for you to get to heaven, you know, all of that, what is?
yeah. So there's a book called Die with Zero that is about the impact that you're able to make while you're here and leave. And you get, because you get to take nothing with you.
Right.
It's not about accumulation to take. It's if you have the ability to generate and accumulate. Here's my beliefs around it, right? This is just Matt's personal journal having a conversation, right? Is if you have the skills and the talents to create an impact and bring value to people at a high level, and you're hiding those skills and talents and not putting yourself out there to where you can help the most people possible. There are families, there are legacies, there are relationships that are not being impacted, that are suffering, that are losing, that are stuck in a relationship that they shouldn't be in, or a job they don't believe in, or whatever that is, right? Like, so if you have the ability to change the world, it's absolutely your obligation to do so, right? And the thing is that value, money is simply an exchange of value. And so you should be compensated for that, right? Appropriately. And the accumulation of value isn't a negative thing, as long as, like, so for me, my perspective is like, my goal is to give up so much value and to give value so much, like, that I can't, like, I don't know, like, so my biggest money challenge is that, like, I have this little affirmation I say, is like, well, it's not even real. So whether I'm really, really up or really, really down, or like in my mind, I'm like, well, money's not even real. Like, my job's just to bring so much value, I can't stop it from either coming or whatever it is. Right. So yeah. And I'd be interested to hear what other people's thoughts or perspectives are around. I think accumulation and hoarding for the sake of it, and thinking that, like, you can't, like, it like accumulate and not give away. And, like, yeah, like, if you die with all that value saved up and you haven't actually, like, put it out and changed the world or changed the future, yeah, I mean, it's, again, opinion, but I that's not the way I want to use it, or not the way I see it. Right. And I do my best to, like, limit judgment on anybody. Right. Like, what I believe or what I should, because it's a slippery slope. Because then I go out on the world and I see, like, I saw a McLaren the other day and it was a beautiful car. I look at a McLaren, I'm like, that's beautiful. Somebody else looks at it and goes, what a waste. Well, to who? Right? Like, there's an engineer that made that. There's a designer. There's a factory. All those workers that are there, their families are all being fed by that supercar. Right? Like, there's all these industries. There's hundreds and hundreds of people that are, a waste for who? For what? Right? I don't know. Like, this is again everyone's favorite subject, and we can all agree on this. Other thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
See how good this is? Everyone's so excited to talk about it. This is the issue and the challenge with money. Nobody wants to talk about it.
I think because sometimes it's scary.
Why?
At least to me it is. Well, I guess it's how I was raised, and unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, I think it's how part of my teaching, part of our growing up, and then I brought it on to my family, our family. I shouldn't say it's just part of growing up, because we didn't have much when we grew up, when my kids grew up, but then we got better, we got more. But we didn't do a very good job of with our money, maybe at first when we were married, and when we were first married, we didn't have much. So then I think that's why it's scary to me, even though we got more money and we had more money, that stays with you longer. And I'm not sure why. At the stigma, maybe. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make
No.
sense to you, does it?
No.
But it is,
No, it
it's a stigma.
absolutely does. No, like, cause we look, here's what I also learned, because coming from personal experience right now, raising my daughters and being in a family and in a marriage, there's no manual.
Mhm.
I
You
haven't
know,
I haven't met anybody that's been the perfect anything. And right. And like everyone's experience is unique and it's their own. And we're all doing the best we can with what we got. And
right.
and the thing is what I got to remember is my parents did the best that they could with what they had. And they had their own programming and their own challenges. And they didn't talk about the things that weren't talked about. And so they passed on the not talking about it to me. And the thing is, I get to make a decision whether I am the one that breaks the legacy, or do I perpetuate it? Do I just go along with it, or do I choose to make it stop with me? Right? Like, so I've made a choice, and Christy and I have made a choice. Guess what? We're going to talk about hard things, especially things like money. And we're going to talk about like creating opportunities and working hard and building businesses and tithing and saving and and setting yourself up for success. One of the hacks that Alex was talking about, he says you've got to create automatic savings and resistance to spending. He says you've got to remove yourself from the emotion of having to set aside or save money. And he says you've got to put barriers in place for you to have to spend it. And then if you read the Profit First system, Mike Mihalicek, he talks about the 5 different accounts. And he said some of those additional accounts, they can't just be in the same institution. He says your best bet is if you like your profit accounts and your operational accounts or your owner distribution accounts, you've got to make it difficult to withdraw the money from those accounts so you don't just automatically do it and make it easy. You've got to go like find a place that you have to go in and sign for that kind of money, right? Like if you just have it, you can't just have like one account and then put in like these virtual buckets in the account, because that's easy. That creates no resistance for spending or mismanaging those funds, right? So he said, create automatic savings and resistance to spending. He says the number one way to save more money is to focus harder on work. He said there's a beautiful thing when you're focusing on work. You don't have time to spend because you're working and you're growing and you're building, as long as you're doing the activities that actually focus on generating revenue. Ramil, I saw you pop up your camera. That's usually like when you're ready to share something, or you just.
No, I was driving, but yeah. So I have my relationship with money is, I don't know. It's a conflict, I guess, just like probably most people. But so grew up, right? Didn't really have money, and because of that, like I came very okay with, um, almost not having it, right? Like just basic stuff, like is just okay. Like I can do with bare minimum stuff. Where that problem comes in is like, okay, so now I own a business, and so it's like my threshold of what is okay is not necessarily what I want from my family. And so I struggle with, okay, how much, do I need to make but still be content, right? And then even like what you just said earlier was, if you have talents to be able to say I can raise $1 billion in my lifetime, right? Now, should I be striving for that, right? To raise $1 billion to then, change the world? Or should I just be content with what I, have in my family have and make sure those people are okay? So to me, everything about money is just contradictory and it gives me a headache. But yeah, I don't have the answer. I don't know.
I don't know if there's an answer to be had here. This isn't a quiz, right? This is an awareness conversation for me, especially, right? And
Mhm.
and I think it's this, right? Um, how do I articulate this? Because it's my goal and mission is to help as many people as I can on a platform as large as I can find. That's my pursuit. The numbers that get attached to that, like I'm less attached to the numbers than I am the mission. and the goal. Because I know that if I do A, then B is taken care of. Like I've got a certain small amount of active income that I need to hit. Well, it's not small, but it's small in retrospect, if you will. But there's an active number that's required. And so I know that if I do a certain amount of activities to take care of the active, then then I focus on maximizing my platform, my gifts and my talents, and helping as many people as I can, as hard as I can. Two things. Number one, I get to come home at the end of the day or over the weekend. I get to sit and I go, all right, I left it all on the field. I'm doing my best, and I'm going to keep pushing to do my best and to be my best self. And then I just also know that opportunity continues to find me exactly in the right time. I mean, so the moment I start focusing on a specific number, when I start feeling like I'm going into scarcity mode, that's where things get really kind of wonky. That's when commission breath starts to come in. That's when the anxiety comes in. That's when I can't sleep. That's when I get woken up at like 12:45 a.m. And my mind is like, oh, you think you thought about all the worst case scenarios? How about this? And you just go into these like hyper worst case scenarios, like everything's gone. You can't, like, everything's gone. It's all gone. You're at zero. You're less than zero. Blah, 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 blah. It all falls apart, right? That's when, yeah. So that's when the scarcity piece kicks in. So, yeah, what's the answer? Number one, I think the answer is to number one, demystify or normalize having money conversations. Right. And opening up the conversations and just understanding that this is a vulnerable thing. And it's because this, right? You can't see wealth. You can see scarcity. And what did he say? He says, poor people buy things to impress the people below them. He says, you can't impress wealthy people with stuff. You only impress wealthy people with work ethic. They see the hustle. They see the effort. They see the contribution. Wealthy people. So the person that could have 50 Rolexes and 25 Lamborghinis and a jet doesn't care about your watch, but they see how you show up. They see they see that you're early. They see that you're prepared. You've always got your stuff. You're not consistently 2 minutes late to anything ever, regardless. Even if it's a free meeting, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're always on before 9 o'clock. They see that. They see you participate. They see that your camera's on and ready to go, whether your hair's done or your makeup's on. They see that. It don't matter. Wealthy people see the hustle. They don't care about the stuff. What's interesting though is like, I like stuff. I'm a super high eye. I like stuff. I mean, I got medals on my wall. Like that's a thing for me, right? Like I only do those races for the t-shirts and the medals. I think they're cool. Anyway.
I think that really goes along with what Mom was saying a minute ago about the rich man it's harder to get into heaven. It's because of the heart and the purpose behind it. If your heart is just to accumulate the stuff and just hoard everything, like you said, that's why it's so hard. But if the heart is right and knowing, like you said a minute ago, your mission is to impact the most people on the highest platform possible, that makes your heart is in the right spot, and you're going to accumulate the wealth that you need to fund that mission because your heart's in the right spot, and you'll be in heaven, and everything just works out. But it all comes back to your heart, and when your heart's right, everything else kind of is attracted to that. That makes sense. That's kind of a rambling
1000%. Now here's the thing, disclaimer. Heart's not enough. It's got to be grounded in hustle. It's got to be grounded in action. It's got to be grounded in the activity. I could have the best intentions in the world and be broke AF.
Yep.
Right. And then like, if you're broke as shit and you can't handle your own stuff, who are you going to help?
Right.
You got to be able to handle your own stuff first before you can even help anybody. And so there's that balance, right? And it goes back to the discipline of visiting your money daily, visiting your calendar daily. How are you budgeting and managing your time? Are you focusing your time on dollar productive activities, or are you wasting time on things that you can leverage? Just because it's easy doesn't mean you should be doing it if you could be doing something that 10x's your income. That's the difference between a business owner's mentality and an employee. An employee works for the hour. The business owner works for net profit. The business owner knows that if I hire more people, if I increase my marketing, I will increase customers. Therefore, I will make more money, even though I've got to pay another cashier, even though I've got to pay another delivery driver. If I can increase those things, I'm making the higher net revenue. So it's like, how do we switch over from those mindsets? It's the biggest challenge. At least for me, it is. And I'm only speaking personally.
And that was the perfect way to end it, because this podcast is sponsored by Leveraged Agent Coaching.
It was like, right. Oh, all right, y'all. Listen, thanks for participating. Thanks for like absorbing this conversation. I'd love for you guys to think about this week, and then let's continue the conversation. We'll see you Wednesday for Workshop Wednesday, where we go into tactics and strategies to make your life even better. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.